focused on helping me heal my trauma and also on finding the right camera angle for your documentary.
That's not what I was
Hey,
doing.
it's cool. That's your hustle. It's all good. But you forgot two very important things, Ava. First, the gasoline. And second, your matches, Ava.
Wait, how did you...
Well, in tonight's episode, our latest filmmaker believes she's got the latest Joe Exotic on her hands. Unfortunately for her, she has no idea how right she truly is. Folks, it's time to take a look at another one of the creep tapes. Stay tuned. Scary movie people, welcome to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Like I said, we are headed over to the shelf yet again because it's time to pop in another one of the creep tapes. Tonight, y'all, we are taking a look at the 4th episode of season 2 entitled Ava. But before we can jump on into that, of course, make sure to hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. If you are a creep fan, I have complete coverage of the first half of season 2, all of season 1, and both films on my channel right now for you to go and check out. And in addition, it is TV week. So on Wednesday, we are headed back to the crypt to take a look at the Tales from the Crypt episode Undertaking Parlor. And then this Friday, after a long time away, we are going to get back into Alien Earth. So a lot of fun stuff coming up for all of you. I don't want you to miss it. If you want your horror content, this is where you need to be here, folks. Hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. But let's not waste any more time and let's go ahead and hop in tonight's episode of The Creep Tapes. Again, we are talking episode 4 of season 2, Ava. Now, when our latest filmmaker arrives at what she believes to be an animal sanctuary for a shoot of a promotional video, this is where she meets Peachfuzz, who is masquerading as David, who has brought Ava in to basically follow his exploits in his makeshift animal sanctuary that doesn't actually hold any kind of animals at all. Ava soon realizes that David's behavior is eccentric and that there's more at work here than just shooting some kind of promotional video, and believes that if she can get some great footage, this can ultimately lead to her making millions of dollars, a la somebody like a Joe Exotic, basically. But unfortunately for Ava, as she continues to cover David throughout the day, as she helps him work through his psychosis, she finds herself becoming the next addition to his collection. Now, with the creep tapes up to it this far, it has been primarily male victims that we've been following Peachfuzz hunting down. I think that's largely just because in a show like this, it does seem far more cerebral. It does seem to really acknowledge the setups that Peachfuzz puts in place for all of his potential victims. And there's a lot of times we are questioning what's going on in his head. Does he feel mercy, guilt, any of those things there? But we don't get to explore it all too often. And the one time that we really got a good chance to do that was in the second Creep film. Because remember, the filmmaker that joined him that time, he wasn't able to throw her off at all. All the usual tricks that we had seen in the first movie by that point, and what we've seen in the TV show, none of that was working with the filmmaker who he brought in Creep 2. And as a matter of fact, she kind of turned the tables back on him, just like David Damashane did in the first episode of this season, to where it's basically like him being uncomfortable with the fact that she actually has a keen interest in him and she's not going to be scared off. And the eccentric, erratic behavior, you know, that could very well be a show, but she's not going anywhere. She is very much there to take it all in. Now, the difference, though, between the filmmaker in Creep 2 and Ava here in this one is that Ava very much made it clear that she's looking to exploit Peachfuzz with all of this. And I think that's an issue with a lot of the victims here that we've seen over the course of this show, is that because their mind gets so focused on what they want, it allows them to overlook some key details that would likely keep them alive. Because quite honestly, the moment that Ava walked into the animal sanctuary and realize like this isn't an animal sanctuary, and this guy is just making like figurines and everything that by the way are named after his previous victims. That she doesn't know that, but we very much well should. It's very early on to where Ava should just tuck tail and leave and get the hell out. And what's fascinating about this episode is that it is entirely shot in the day, and it's entirely set during the day, and that's not like out of place for the creep tapes at all. You know, we had a great episode in season 1 with the Bird Watcher that was entirely set during the day as well. So we have a few episodes that are like that, but they don't stay at this animal sanctuary. And to go further than that, Peachfuzz even goes around other people in the midst of trying to get to his murder of Ava at the end of the episode. You know, there's a part to where they're driving together and he runs up to a gas station and fills up a gas can that he's going to use at the end of the episode. And it's just so fascinating to see, because typically it always seems like Peachfuzz is doing so much just to make sure his tracks are covered and that there's no way to link him back to anything that's happening at all. Nowhere that there's going to be cameras or anybody's going to recognize his face or anything along those lines. But man, that did seem a little dangerous for him. And I wish sometimes there was a continued narrative across this show and across these films, because then it's one of those things where, like, you know, if a cop showed up 2 episodes down the line, like in the season finale, it'd be like, oh, that goes back to this specific tape, because this is the time where he really wasn't taking care like he normally would. But I enjoy that change dynamic here, because we don't know the chronological order of any of these tapes, any of the victims that we're seeing Peachfuzz interact with. So we have no idea how earlier on or later on in his murderous career this ultimately is. So getting something different and new, that has been such a great hallmark here of this franchise. You know, Patrick Brice and Mark Duplass, their writing of this has just been fantastic, making sure that we're getting these very, very different scenarios for every single episode that's there. I have to imagine that is the big reason to keep the short episode count, just because if you were to do a lot more, I think that the two of them would really want a longer hiatus or pause in between seasons, just so they can make sure they're not lapping themselves, that they're not doing the same thing over and over and over. Now, Ava, who's played by Taylor Garrett in this episode, you know, you can get it because, like most of the other filmmakers that we have seen approach Peachfuzz here, a lot of the time they don't have nefarious intentions when they're coming around him here, but she makes it very clear up front that the moment she notices this bad behavior, she's looking to exploit that. So it's like a cardinal sin at that point, because again, she doesn't know that, but we know that Peachfuzz picks up on those things. And the fact that she wouldn't think that he wouldn't recognize that at all, it's creepy in the best way, and Garen plays it so well to where she believes she has the upper hand throughout the majority of this episode. And even though she's not on camera for the majority of it, there is genuine shock the moment that that switch is flipped and all of the crazy goes away and he starts talking rationally, and within seconds she realizes that it's the end of her life. Like, it is terrifying, and I think Aaron makes a great victim here in this. It honestly just goes to show you that when Peachfuzz does target, you know, women victims, that a lot of times those tales are just far more interesting than what we've seen. And that's not a knock against the other episodes of the show or the first movie by any means, because God, those things are absolutely frightening and they are very, very effective. But it stands out being so much more effective that we don't get these female victims all that often. Now, I don't know what to expect in the last 2 episodes here of this season, besides the fact that Katie Hasselton is coming back to do an episode here, but I don't know if that means she's going to be the victim, is she going to be a killer like David Damashane was? Like, there's no idea where that's ultimately going. Either way, this makes this episode so much more interesting than a lot of the other ones that we've seen very recently. From a psychological standpoint, man, Peachfuzz is just so great at being a killer here, because I feel that in any long-term franchise or media that we've watched, like the same killer, whether we're talking somebody like Dexter or Barry or Dahmer or whatever the case is, ultimately, fictional or non-fictional, I feel that it's hard for those people to come up with different charades and masquerades every time and really pour themselves into it. And every single time Peachfuzz has a masquerade up and is putting on a new disguise, he is committed 100% to that. And so the psychological breakdowns throughout this episode, at times, like, you're really invested to think like, well, is this a little bit of truth seeping into reality? But again, the way that that switch just gets flipped at the end of the episode, it brings it back to the fact that Peachfuzz is just a phenomenal actor. And there is a lot of setup that goes into setting up these cover stories here. It's also kind of crazy to think that how many people he kills to get these cover houses, right? Because he is never at the same place twice. So he's very clearly like killing or renting these places out. So it's like, it's almost like he has double the victims that we probably think he ultimately does. Because he can't be doing that with everybody, right? Not setting up some elaborate cover story. Like, there's got to be like, ooh, this house would be good for a setup. Knock, knock, stab, or axe, and you're dead. Cool, got the place now. Now let's focus on the actual victim. Like, it kind of just feels that's the way he's carrying all of these out here. But again, following him along throughout all these psychological breaks, and the fact that just like so many of these other victims out there, Ava has had multiple chances to get herself out of it. It's one of those things that when we get to the very end and we see that Peachfuzz is covering himself in gasoline, that she should really be concerned about what's happening. And that kind of leads to the only issue that I've had really in a major way with like the Creep franchise thus far. It's just the execution of killing Ava at the end of this episode. He kills all his victims in a multitude of different ways out there. But with Ava, he burns her alive. And the thing is, though, it's not like he's using fake gasoline on himself. At the end of the episode, like, he douses himself to keep up the charade. Ava stops him. She hugs him. We made a breakthrough. We found out what your trauma ultimately is. And then he immediately breaks character. Is like, well, you should have thought about hugging me before you did because I'm covered in gasoline. Now you're covered in gasoline, and sets her on fire. But the problem I have with that is that he's still covered in gasoline. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that doesn't seem like the smartest thing there. I know we're going to set the story so he doesn't get hurt by it, but I don't actually understand how with her that close to him, because if you look, they are fairly close to each other. I don't know how he doesn't catch fire either. So it's my only criticism with it, just because it's one of those things where, like, at least if he stepped back and threw a lighter or something, I would get it. But again, he is covered in gasoline more than she is. He should absolutely be the one that's rolling around on the ground screaming at the end of this episode instead of her. And I don't want Peachfuzz dead, but that's just the reality of the setup here of that final scene. And it's abrupt, man. A lot of these deaths that Peachfuzz carries out, they are instantaneous. There is no suffering. There is no waiting. It is a quick stab or shot or whatever there, and they're gone. There isn't a lot of suffering to it. And it really seems like Ava had the worst death out of what we've seen in this franchise thus far. Again, I go back to season 1 of the show with the bird watcher who got suffocated. But this one seems a lot worse, honestly, because it took a second for her to actually die out here on this one. So, another really good episode. It allowed us to really see the great acting work that Peachfuzz puts in, the preparation that he takes for all of his various victims that he's going through. But at the same time, that ending scene did raise a few questions on how he walked away completely unscathed. Y'all, I want to hear what you were thinking about the Creep tapes, though. If you are keeping up here with season 2, it is all available right now on Shudder. So if you are and you checked Ava out, I want to hear your thoughts about this in the comments section. Am I being too critical when it comes to that final scene to where Peachfuzz, I feel, should have caught a flame as well, too? Am I wrong about that? What did you think of his acting skills in this particular episode? Let me know that in the comment section. And again, make sure to get subscribed to my channel. This week is TV week, so we got some Tales from the Crypt and Alien Earth coming for you. And there's so much other great horror content on the channel for you to check out right now. That is going to do it for me tonight, though, folks. I appreciate you tuning in yet again. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.